Welcome to the Industry Angel podcast. This series of episodes were live streamed on June 19th and the audio was downloaded as podcast episodes just for you. Stay safe, my friends, and keep in touch. Adrienne specializes in transformational change around the world, focusing on the heart of business, the people. Through international conference speaking, consultant coaching, and workshops, she enables individuals and companies to focus on the heart of who they are and what matters the most. Welcome to the Industry Angel, Adrienne Gibson.
Thanks so much, Ian.
I've got some true or false questions for you to start with. Is that okay?
Of course.
Right, true or false, okay? Alabama girls. They take forever to get ready.
Well, it depends.
True or false, Adrienne? Stop it.
True.
There you go.
True.
You have road rage.
True.
You like being outside.
True.
You've been drinking hard liquor from being 15 years old.
No, my mom could be watching. False.
You expect manners.
Yes, true.
Yes.
Very true.
Yeah, and you respond to texts right away, and you insist that everyone else does.
Sometimes. That's sometimes true, sometimes false. It depends on who it is.
And at the annual PSA conference, you've been you don't go to bed till about 3 a.m. True. Yeah. I can attest that. Well, it's lovely to have you with us. Thanks so much.
Thank you.
Because you're not in Alabama anymore, you're over this side of the pond. You're ours now. You're in London, yeah?
I'm officially a British girl. I've converted.
Have you? Have you got a passport and all that?
I do. I've had it for years, four or 5 years now. Yeah.
Have you? Wow.
Yeah.
So you're out. There you go. You're ours. What have you been doing? How's things been for you then down in London? Because I remember we spoke the other day and you showed me the view outside of your apartment and it's on the Thames. And so how's things been going there?
Yeah, well, like any place, it's been interesting, right? Because I've experienced my flat more in the last 3 months than I have in the 2.5 years I've lived here. Because I'm normally traveling quite a bit, etc. So literally, I think in the last 3 months, I've spent more time in my flat than I have the last 2.5 years. And at first, it was very quiet. But now, because I live over a park, as you mentioned, it's quite rowdy in the evening. So it's getting a bit more lively as lockdown starts to unwind a bit and the pubs aren't yet open. So I'm keen for the pubs to be open so that all the teenage and college age kids can go somewhere else. Yeah,
I think there's a few of us keen for the pubs to be open, but for very different reasons. So look at you anglicized with your flat rather than your apartment.
Well, I've been here 11 years, Ian. I've had to pick up some lingo, of course.
But that beautiful
but I do still say y'all as well. I may
y'all,
say
I know
that,
you do.
I say y'all.
I know you do, and I love it. Right, what we got here then. You are going to give us 3 commandments, rules, tips. Tell me, you tell me, you take the floor.
So I think for me, the experience that we've been all going through around the world with COVID and lockdowns in various forms, et cetera, we've experienced a lot of unprecedented stuff during this time. But the one thing that I see as a silver lining is that I think it's really humanized business. Whether businesses, had put people at the heart and focused on them with kindness and compassion before or not, now we're kind of forced to humanize business a bit more because people are working from their homes and we're getting to see people in their real environments. Some of my favorite things are where you'll be hosting global meetings and you've got this senior manager in Germany and his 11-year-old daughter's coming up behind him going, things like this, right? And that's brilliant because you actually get to see people in their real environment versus the suit that they put on to show up for work. And my view is that I think for a lot of people, folks don't want to go back to the old way. And I'm not going to use the phrase return to normal because I don't think that was normal. I think it's time for us to transform and show up in a different way in work and more with heart. So the work that I do is a lot of times working with businesses on how they can transform the heart of their business. But also today, I want to talk about how we as individuals can transform the way that we show up in work. A lot of the conversations I'm having with people now are about they don't want to go back to the old way. So even myself included, I was on the road more than I was off. And, that doesn't appeal to me. No, I will always love traveling and exploring the world because that's a huge passion for me. But I don't want to be flying around all the time. The fact that we can do work remotely so effectively now, I think has changed the way that people think about their commutes and how much time they spend away from home. And are we really investing our time where it matters most for us? So I do think that workplaces are going to change and should change to create more of a balance. And people use the expression work-life balance all the time. My view is there is no such thing as work-life balance. You have a life. And part of what you do with that life is earning a living. And it needs to be a part of your life, not consuming your life to the point that you don't actually get to enjoy yourself. So how are we going to reset and create a new norm in the way that we show up in business and how businesses are going to operate so that we can take advantage of what's really worked well from this experience and bring that into creating a new way of being in work?
I think we're all guilty of that, Adrienne, that getting on this hamster wheel that we always talk about and just really scurrying around, and actually it becomes quite habitual before you know it, that you don't leave work till 6 or 7. That just becomes a thing. And then, maybe your partner and your children get used to that as well. Mom or dad doesn't come home till that time. And why? What we done that ourselves for? So, you've heard the term reset quite a lot in this pandemic, but it has, isn't it? It has really reset us.
And also one of the learnings for me has been, I'm one of those people that when I get on something, I'm on. And it's 12, 14, 16-hour days easily for me when I'm working. And for me, it's been actually stopping and going outside and enjoying myself and just having that downtime, because I can be too much the other end sometimes. So I think it's been a nice reset for us to think about the way that we show up for work. And for people who might now be reemerging, getting back more involved in work and be thinking about going back into the office, one of the things I'd say is don't be afraid to ask to do things differently. A lot of companies I'm talking to now also are recognizing that they can work effectively remotely. They can do things differently. And there's a cost saving to doing that for the business as well. So for people who are returning to work and trying to find, don't just accept the fact that you have to go back to the way that it was before. Find a new norm that works better for you and the business. And don't be afraid to ask for it.
It's interesting. I've quite got used to and quite enjoying this kind of thing. And what I've saw with clients is that they're actually embracing themselves and they're just saying, let's go remote now. And they're actually saying, let's go remote in October. Maybe in October might be better. Maybe you and I speak. Maybe conferences might be back on. I don't know. Socially distanced, of course. But people aren't prepared to wait now. They're actually saying, no, let's do this. It works fine. It's great. And I think the level of expectation has adjusted to the norm. For instance, if we were speaking Adrienne or training or delivering some consulting, if you're quite conscientious, you want to deliver 110% only. You want those people to walk out of the room buzzing. I think doing this remote stuff, we've kind of got a little bit of slack. I mean, look at me this morning running around with tech and stuff. People are just like, it's fine, we get it. And it actually makes us, we've kind of calmed down a little bit. We don't have to be 100% perfect. We're human.
Yeah, I agree. And that's part of what I mean about humanizing business, that so often people show up for work trying to portray a particular image. And now it's kind of masks coming off and let's see what's happening. And the fact that I'm, Zooming or Microsoft Teaming with some guy in Poland who, bless him, has this fake background. I'm like, so what's up with your background? And he takes it off and it's his kid's bedroom. And I'm like, dude, the toy's in the background. That's really cool, right? Or I had a business call with someone yesterday, a vendor that I'm going to be working with. And I said, do I see kid drawings on your wall, right? Where he's trying to have this professional appearance in this little screen right within his kid's drawing. Let me see your kid's drawings, because that's what I mean about humanizing business. And I don't want us to lose that. So when we find whatever this new norm is, how can we incorporate, a little bit of what used to be with a little bit of what we've had recently to find a new way that serves a better purpose? Because the reality is we are just people. And the more we can show up as our authentic selves day in and day out, the more we are going to enjoy it, the more businesses are going to get from us, right? So how can we do that more and not feel like we have to put that old mask on and get back on the hamster wheel, because that doesn't serve anyone.
So Adrienne, how can you get us across if leaders, for instance, don't understand that, but we as employees, we as team, want that? Well, what do you do? Can you speak to leaders and get them across this transformative?
Yes, I'm going to personally advocate and arm wrestle every leader myself to make them think this way. That's how it works. I do have reasonably good influencing skills with my coaching and consulting, but
I know you do.
I do think it is about, I call it the what's working, what's not working conversation. A lot of times it really is that simple in business. Either if you're a manager talking to an employee, or if you're an employee talking to your manager, let's just put it on the table. What's working and not working? It doesn't have to be confrontation and difficult. It can be just about, this is working well for me, and these are some areas that aren't working out so well. And that conversation works for everything: feedback, performance, working conditions. It doesn't matter. Team dynamics. I encourage people to do that all the time. So have that. Say, you know what? Yeah, we're going back to work, but let's talk about what worked for me in the old way and what didn't, and how we can work some compromise of something in the middle. And it is too, when we're talking to managers, if they have a completely different view from what we have, how can we find common ground and meet in the middle, trial some things, try to get someone to do something on a temporary basis to see if it works. Let us experiment. Let's try something out. If it works, great. And if it doesn't, okay, then we'll come back to more towards your side of how you want things to work. But try to see if you can at least get a temporary window to pilot it, try it out, see what works.
So in terms of when people do go back to work, so I think there's still a lot of people working from home. In our business centre here, it's not full to capacity by any means. There's a lot of people still working from home. When people do get back to business, things have changed, Adrienne.
Yes.
We personally might have changed. Our mindset might have changed. We might have understand what's important and all that kind of good stuff. But actually, the workplace is going to be changed. The business will change. Cash flow. We're going to be losing team members, unfortunately, losing clients. How can we deal with that?
Yeah, and that's key. I mean, I do think there's going to be a lot of transformation in business. The way that we work, whether it's virtual or in person, there is going to be some change in some businesses where they're going to have to sell off, divest, transform, restructure. It means that some people may lose jobs as well. And for me, it is, those kind of decisions are always difficult decisions that have to be made in business. That's the reality of running a business. But doing it with heart, treating people with compassion and kindness, treating people in a humane way, and also for us recognizing that life is about change. And if something happens where it may be that we lose an opportunity, a business has to change, it's about trying to seek opportunities to do things a bit differently and get outside the box in the way that we think about work and the way that we approach it, and keep exploring other options for ways that we can earn money for ourselves that might not be so traditional. Because there's more opportunity out there than I think people realize sometimes, because we stay trapped in a little, this is the way work works. But it doesn't have to. We can be creative and create something new and different and better for ourselves.
So when you talk about that, Adrienne, are you talking about people can create their own revenue stream outside of work?
Yeah. Come on, you and I have done that, right? I came out of corporate environments for 20 years and I do my own thing, right? Which is why I show up as the four things you mentioned when you did the introduction. It's finding what works for you. And I create a business that supports the lifestyle I want. And there's a lot more opportunity for people to do that nowadays than I think many people realize. Of course, it takes being a bit open to taking risks and putting yourself out there. But the more risk you can take and be comfortable with to do something a bit different, the more reward that comes along with it.
I love that. And if anybody's watching, if you've started something, a little side hustle or a little project, making something, selling stuff on eBay or Depop or any of these channels, let us know if you're really interested to see, because I think what we said at the start, we did this on April Fool's Day, and what we said was, let's not look back. And Jeff Ram really posed this question: what are you going to do with this time? Because we knew we'd be here for a long time. So are you going to get all the way to the end and not have achieved anything?
Yeah.
So I'd love to understand if anyone has done that. What about you personally, Adrienne? What have you done?
Well, I've written an ebook as well, and produced some content that I'm looking to be kind of phase one of the ebook was leading through the heart of a storm, and then the next phase is how do we transforming with heart. That's the next piece of it. Is that how do we get through the crisis, the heavier parts of the crisis, and then how do we transform with heart? So that's some stuff that I'm working on at the moment, and doing a lot of consulting with businesses on that as well.
So is there any particular techniques that you have, or was it more so just the consultant and the listening and the talking and sharing wisdom, or is there some real killer kind of content?
No, the thing for me is recognizing that businesses are made up of individual human beings that all have hopes and dreams and fears and aspirations. And each one of us is wired differently, whether we think about our mental wiring and, the way that we process and receive information, or our emotions or our personality types or whatever. And recognizing that every person is unique and trying to communicate in a way that really resonates across the board. And to make decisions, obviously we have to make some tough decisions in times like this. It's inevitable. But how we execute against those can be done with heart and compassion and kindness for people. Because I'm a big believer that storms come and go, crises come and go, but the way that you lead through them is the legacy that remains long beyond any crisis or storm or change program. So how do we create the legacy that we want with people by the way that we're choosing to show up and leading our businesses? That's really, to me, part of the core.
Can you change somebody, Adrienne? I'm smiling away as I say this. We've seen some of these hard-faced leaders in the past, and a few will spring to people's minds, like Steve Jobs and stuff. Great entrepreneurs, but these guys were tough and not nice to work for, actually. Do you see in your world these people, and can you soften them up? Can you bring, as Helena says there, the labradoodle around and get them to soften up, or are there always these tough people?
Ian, I thought you saw my Superwoman cape and knew my capabilities, of course, right? I just waved my magic wand. In all seriousness, of course I do. And I worked in some industries where we had quite an abundance of guys like that, given my corporate background. The answer is yes and no. People change themselves. And people only change when they are willing to change. And sometimes it takes really difficult situations happening to people to get them to open up to change. So even though I do executive coaching, I can coach people to the point that they're willing to go, not beyond that, right? And one of the things I'm seeing is circumstances like this open people's eyes and create a bit more willingness to see things from a different perspective. Or I've seen leaders like what you've described that are really hard and difficult, and they feel that sense of power and they wield it all over the place. And then suddenly the power structure that was supporting them is gone, and they're suddenly a bit more vulnerable and nobody's engaging with them anymore. And they're in a vulnerable, humble position, and they start looking at things a little bit differently. Sometimes, sadly, it takes difficult circumstances to get people to open up and see things differently. But once they do, helping support them on that journey, anybody can change. It's about whether or not they're willing to.
That's a really good point. Yeah, I mean, Sean brings a good point up here that every person has their own motivation. And it's up to us as leaders to tap into that. So
right.
How do you do it? How do you do that? Is that through a series of one-to-ones and sit-downs? And,
So my background is I spent 20 years as an HR executive, right? And so I've been talking about talent and developing people for a really long time. I'm a huge believer. It's not my job as a leader to tell someone how they need to be developed, because I'm all knowing and I know what your career path needs to be. It's about having a conversation with every person to understand them, what makes them tick from a motivational standpoint, and their own personal aspirations. Because just because I think you have a particular career path that I think is right for you, it's not about that. It's what do you want? What works for you? So having conversations about aspiration and about motivation, understanding each person in the team, that's what helps a leader to really move the needle, because when they understand their people, they can relate to them more on a one-on-one level, even if it's in a broader setting. So that's the big thing that I try to talk about, is get to the heart of your business, understand your people to the degree you can. I mean, some businesses I work with, one of them was 350,000 people. Okay, it might be a little bit hard to understand each person at an individual level, but manager by manager, of course they can.
And I'm a big fan of getting people in their comfort zone in terms of what they enjoy to do.
Yeah.
So, for instance, I interviewed a young lady yesterday, and I was like, I don't want you to do all these things that you don't like doing. What's your passion? What do you enjoy doing? And that's what we get you into. And should that change in a couple of years' time, then we'll move you into that. There's nothing worse when I was a boy and sitting down and someone saying, right, okay, can you go and do it over there? And I'm like, oh my word, not enjoy it. You've got to put us in the right pigeonholes, if you know what I mean.
I agree. I'm a big believer in playing to our passions and our strengths.
You put it much better than I did.
You've seen those quotes that don't teach a fish to climb a tree, right? Every one of us has particular strengths and passions, and how do we help amp that up? It's not about perfecting all the little things that we don't enjoy and aren't good at. It's how do we put people in situations to play to their strengths and set them up for success? So what is it that we're really passionate about and really good at? Do that. That's what you do for a living. Sure. Like us, Ian, we run businesses. It means that even though I love engaging with people, that's my secret power, right? Engaging and connecting with people. But the reality is, I run a business. I've got to do the accounting every month.
Yeah.
I don't like it. But I have to show up and do that because that's part of it. But I want to spend more of my time doing this kind of stuff, connecting with people. So I pay an accountant to do the heavy lifting. I do a little bit so that I don't have to spend so much of my time doing that, because I don't want to invest my time and energy there. It sucks the life out of me to a degree. How do we play to our passions and our strengths? And in businesses, how do leaders get to know their people well enough that they know those things and bring that out in the team? When they're allowing every person to show up as their best self, doing authentically what they love most and getting the most out of people, that's when you get the most engagement, and teams really accelerate in that environment.
How do you do that? And is it through communication? Is it through constant talk and the one thing? And
I think the core element for me is about really genuinely connecting and understanding your people, which does come through, I think, conversation. There's other ways to do it as well. I've got some teams I'm working with right now where I'm running psychometrics to help them understand a little bit more. And I'm working with whole intact teams to say, what does this mean that you're an introvert and I'm an extrovert, or whatever the case is, right? And so you can do it in ways like that too, in broader settings. But call me old-fashioned. I think getting to know people on a one-on-one level and what makes them tick is the best way. There are other ways of doing it, but that to me is the best way. And maybe that's because I love to connect with people. To me, there's no greater joy in life than connecting one-on-one with someone.
I totally agree, and I love to speak to people like that one-on-one in terms of their personal life as well. If someone says to me, how's Luke doing with his barbering, and how's Jessica's art doing, and I bet you missed them going to see Sunderland play football, and did you have a curry last night? 'Cause I know you're mad for them. I love when people know those personal details around you, and we should do that. And as a leader, I think we should be dropping those into conversations, not just to tick the box, or just to show that you know that about them, but actually because you want to know how Luke's barbering's going. You want to know, you care.
And that is a leadership superpower, is that when you show people they care, they matter, their opinions matter, they're valued, they're appreciated, It's day in and day out little things that you do to demonstrate the fact that people matter, and they're more than someone occupying a seat or a number on a payroll, right? They're a human being, and you show them that you actually care about them as a person. People talk about how to boost employee engagement. That's how you do it. There's lots of other ways, and I tell companies all the time about how to up it a little bit more with employee engagement. But the real truth is connecting with them at a heart level and showing them they matter as a human being. That gets more out of people than anything else.
I love employee advocacy as well, especially around social media. You know, what you find is, we'll go off on a bit of a tangent here, but when you find a brand, you have a marketing manager who has the keys to the social media stream, and that's their thoughts and that's the company thoughts. Why not let everybody chip in and have that employee advocacy to share about the company from their point of view, not just what the corporate's saying?
Yeah. And sometimes there's a risk in that, right? Because it shows people how it shows the external market how people are really treated on the inside, and not that image that we paint to look pretty to the market. But if you're doing the right thing day in and day out, you shouldn't need to have to worry about that image. It speaks for itself. Your people are your best advocates when you treat them the way that they want to be treated.
Fantastic stuff. I love that. If you've got a question for Adrienne, because we've only got a few more minutes before she leaves us, is there anything you want to leave us with, Adrienne, before he goes? Anything that I haven't asked you or haven't discussed that you want to pop in?
No, the biggest thing for me is, for whether we're talking to people who are the leaders and running the business, or we're talking to people who are showing up and driving the business day in and day out, right? It's be open-minded and think about a new way of working. You know, we've been given this incredibly unusual experience of all of us kind of having to work in a different way, and life has forced us to do something different. What can we take from this experience as a positive and help us to do something different going forward? To me, that is the most important thing, is don't waste this opportunity. If people try to just go back to the way things were, we have really wasted this experience. We need to take the gold nuggets that came from this and try to figure out how we bring that forward in a new way of being, not just getting back to normal. Let that go, and let's start with a clean slate and take what works best from both experiences and create something new.
Fantastic. Well, thank you so much for joining us this morning, Adrienne, and for kicking our morning off.
Thanks. It's a real pleasure, and I'm happy to join y'all again sometime in the future.
Thanks so much. And thanks for asking the true or false questions.
Yeah, some of those are a little,
Well, hopefully your mother's not watching. Okay, Adrienne, lovely to see you again.
You too. Take care.
Bye-bye.
Bye.
There she is. She's gone. How cool is Adrienne? What I took away from that was that don't be afraid to ask. Don't be afraid to go and see your manager and say, I don't want to do this. I don't want to do that. I'd like to work from home. We could do this a little bit differently. We've got a voice now, and things have changed. Maybe it would be great to get back to business and just have a chat around what you've done differently, how your mindset might have changed, what things you've implemented in your life that you might want to implement in the workplace, and get together and communicate.